Om Tava Kathamritam Tapta Jeevanam Kavibireeditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Srimadaadatam Bhuvi Ye Bhurida Janaha. Sri Ramakrishna Kathamrita, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, recorded by M. Sri Mahendranath Gupta, a disciple and apostle of the Master. Sri Ma Kathita. কলকাতায় শ্রী বিদ্যাসাগর সঙ্গে শ্রী রামকৃষ্ণের মিলন। Sri Ramakrishna's meeting with Sri Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar in his Calcutta house. ব্রহ্ম যে কি মুখে বলা যায় না, সব জিনিস উচ্ছিষ্ট হয়ে গেছে, বেদ পুরাণ তন্ত্র ষড় দর্শন সব এটো হয়ে গেছে, মুখে পড়া হয়েছে, মুখে উচ্চারণ হয়েছে, তাই এটো হয়েছে। কিন্তু একটি জিনিস কেবল উচ্ছিষ্ট হয় নাই, সেই জিনিসটি ব্রহ্ম। ব্রহ্ম যে কি আজ পর্যন্ত কেউ মুখে বলতে পারে নাই। What is Brahman has not been uttered by the tongue. মুখে বলা হয়নি, মুখে বলা যায় না, it cannot be spoken of. Nobody can speak about Brahman because Brahman is beyond words. The Upanishads we find yato vacho nivartante apraapya manasa saha. Taittiriya Upanishad says, words come back, return from that without being able to reach it. And the mind also comes back, retreats. Yan manasana manute yenahur manomatam tadeva brahmatvam vidhenedam vididam upasate yat chakshushana pashyati yena chakshum shipashyati tadeva brahmatvam vidhenedam vididam upasate. Mind cannot reach there, but it is because of the power of Brahman that the mind is able to function. Speech cannot reach there, but it is the power of Brahman which makes us speak. Prana cannot reach there, but it is the power of Brahman that the prana is able to function. That is the Brahman. So this is the Kena Upanishad. So we know from the Upanishads, from the scriptures, that Brahman is avanga manasogocharam. It is beyond Vak, beyond the mind. But it can be realized by the pure mind. Pure mind, pure buddhi, and the pure Atman are one and the same. সব জিনিস উচ্ছিষ্ট হয়ে গেছে, বেদ পুরাণ তন্ত্র ষড় দর্শন সব এটো হয়ে গেছে। All the various scriptures, the Vedas, the Puranas, Tantra, all of them have been defiled by the tongue. Mukhe poda hoyeche. Because you chant the Vedic mantras, you chant the Gita and the Upanishads and the Tantra and the Puranas, all of them in a sense therefore have been defiled by the tongue because the saliva touches these words. মুখে উচ্চারণ হয়েছে তাই এটো হয়ে গেছে। Eto is a very interesting concept in Hinduism particularly. In the West, very few people understand this Eto. It's very scientific because your saliva may infect somebody else. And therefore in Hinduism, particularly in a relationship, people do not, by tradition, convention, and as a matter of principle, what is touched by your tongue cannot be taken by anybody else. Nobody else can eat what has been touched by your tongue, by your saliva. He is making a pun on this, just like that which is touched by your saliva and tongue has been spoiled, uchishto. All the Vedas, Puranas, and Tantras, all the scriptures of the world have been spoken about, have been talked about. And therefore, they have become defiled by the tongue, as it were. Brahman alone has not been defiled because you can't speak about Brahman, you can't say what is Brahman. সেই জিনিসটি ব্রহ্ম কেবল উচ্ছিষ্ট হয়নি, ব্রহ্ম যে কি আজ পর্যন্ত কেউ মুখে বলতে পারে নাই। What is Brahman? Nobody has been able to say so far, describe Brahman, because it is beyond description. That which is beyond speech, beyond mind, beyond the senses, that is Brahman. Tadeva Brahmatvam vidhi. Nedam yadidam upasate. The upasya Brahman, which is Saguna Brahman, which is a form, which is a name, whose mantra you can meditate upon, you can chant, repeat. That is not the Brahman we are talking about. The Upanishad, the Rishi says, but that Brahman which is beyond the mind, beyond speech, that is the Brahman we are talking about. বিদ্যাসাগর বন্ধুদের প্রতি বাহ, এটি তো বেশ কথা, আজকে একটি নতুন কথা শিখলাম। Vidyasagar was such a great scholar. He says, oh, this is such a wonderful, elevating doctrine. Today I have learned something new. This is the power of the avatar. Maybe it is there somewhere in the scriptures. Ramakrishna heard about all this from so many sadhus and saints and mahatmas used to come, cross his path in Dakshineshwar, because most of them used to come for Ganga Sagar Tirtha Yatra, as Totapuri himself came. And on the way they used to stop at Dakshineshwar because their river is available for bath, shaucha, etc. And prasad is available in the Kali temple. And so many things which are kambal and kamandulu, etc., which are necessary for sadhus, used to be available in the store which Mathur Babu created at the behest of Rani Rashmani. So much of hospitality they used to get. And therefore sadhus used to flock that place. And Rani Rashmani and Mathur Babu, her son-in-law, were so delighted that hundreds of sadhus used to come. And the main attraction for all the sadhus was Ramakrishna. Once again, compare with Sri Ramachandra's life. All of us know that Ramachandra was banished to the forest for 14 years by Kaikeyi. What is the spiritual significance? Sashaktika avatar, the avatara along with his Shakti and with Anuja, Lakshmana, they went to the forest for 14 years. What is the purpose? Hundreds of great rishis and munis and saints, after performing tapasya, hard penances for years upon end, having attained to a very high state, just waiting for the last mile, last push which will give them Ishvara Darshana, direct perception, sakshatkara of the divine. So Ramachandra the avatar went himself to the forest from place to place to place and gave darshan to all these rishis and emancipated them. This is the spiritual significance of Ramachandra being banished to the forest. Exactly the same way we find the Ramakrishna avatara. Hundreds of Mahatmas, saints, Mahapurushas used to come to Dakshineshwar on the way to Ganga Sagar, and Sri Ramakrishna's company, his holy words, his darshan used to elevate them, give them emancipation. How many can you name? Some names are found as Vaishnava Charan and Gauri Pandit and so on. Bhairavi Brahmani, who initiated Sri Ramakrishna in the mysteries of the Tantras, she could understand the divine incarnation aspect of Sri Ramakrishna and wanted to prove, based on the scriptures scientifically, on the authority of documentary evidence of the various holy scriptures of Hinduism, the Tantras, the Bhagavata, and the Vaishnava Tantras in particular, and to prove unequivocally that Sri Ramakrishna was avatar, as a divine manifestation, divine incarnation. So he called a council. Now we call it NAC in higher education, National Assessment and Accreditation Council. To assess and accredit Sri Ramakrishna, So I used to funnily say the first knack was constituted by Bhairavi Brahmani in Ramakrishna tradition. Later on, we also had to go through the knack process, and we got the highest grade of A++ with 3.66 CGP out of 4 because Ramakrishna got the highest 4 out of 4. Purna Avatar Varishtha. So many great scholars were killed. Among them was Gauri Pandit and Vaishnavacharan, who was considered very great scholars in those days. Extremely expensive. They used to brought in a palanquin and with so many attendants and so much of remuneration, honorarium had to be given to them, Swarna Mudra. And Bhairavi Brahmani, just like protecting a child, a mother trying to speak on behalf of the child, he used to quote from scripture after scripture to show, just like Radhika and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how the Bhava and Mahabhava used to manifest in the body of Sri Ramakrishna. And what is Ramakrishna's reaction? Like a child, he is eating some mauri. Mauri is what is eaten after food, just for digestion. So he is quietly eating some mauri and then watching the fun. Sometimes saying, Nago, oirakum na, amar erakam hoto. No, it is not like that. I used to have that kind of experience and so on. At the end of it, it was proved that Ramakrishna is the avatara, the greatest manifestation of God. And like a proud mother, Bhairavi Brahmani declared to Ramakrishna, now it has been proved, তোমাকে avatar বলে প্রমাণ করা হয়েছে. Then Ramakrishna, like a child, he said, যাই হোক, পাগল নেই বলে দিয়েছে তো. Well, I hope they have declared that I am not mad. That is utter simplicity and transparency of this person. Then somebody told, Vaishnavacharan says he is an avatar. And Gauri Pandit called, became excited, angry. Said, what? Chi? Avatar bolche? Ki heen buddhi? She avatar noy. যেই উৎস থেকে সমস্ত অবতার জন্ম নেয় সেই উৎস হচ্ছে তিনি. He is not an avatar, but he is that source from which all the avatars come. Tamadhutam kanchidachintya shaktim vande prashantam paripurnabodham jnanasya bhaktescha vishuddhamurtim Vimurtimekam bhuvi Ramakrishnam. Adbhutam kinchid achintya shaktim. What wonder! Extraordinary power, unthinkable, indescribable. Some kind of a divine, unthinkable, wonderful power. Prashantam, calm, tranquil. Paripurna bodham, consciousness, the pure, supreme awareness or consciousness, complete and full. This is the description of Ramakrishna in the famous Stotra composed by Pramadadas Mitra, which is the favorite of Mahapurush Swami Shivanandaji, second president of the order. So he had heard from so many Mahatmas, Vedanta, Tantra, Ramayana, Ashtavakra, so much of description of the Brahman. Somewhere, he has heard from some people, Brahma Uchishto Haini. So Ramakrishna used to say, আমি কিছু বই নাও পড়তে পারি, কত শুনেছি গো. I may not have read books, but how much I've heard. And he was a Shrutidhara of the highest class, first class. Shrutidhara means a person who can retain in memory what he has heard just once. Swami Sharadanandaji in the Leela Prasanga classifies Shrutidhara as top class and the second class. প্রথম শ্রেণীর শ্রুতিধর, দ্বিতীয় শ্রেণীর শ্রুতিধর। প্রথম শ্রেণী হচ্ছে রামকৃষ্ণ, দ্বিতীয় শ্রেণী হচ্ছেন স্বামী বিবেকানন্দ। Just here once he remembers. Extraordinary capacity for absorption and remembering divine truths. So Vidyasagar says, বাহ, এটি তো বেশ কথা, আজ একটি নতুন কথা শিখলাম। বাহ, oh, wonderful. This is a great truth I have heard for the first time, and today I have learned something new. Sri Ramakrishna, এক বাপের দুটি ছেলে ব্রহ্মবিদ্যা শিখবার জন্য ছেলে দুটিকে বাপ আচার্যের হাতে দিলেন। কয়েক বছর পর তারা গুরুগৃহে থেকে ফিরে এলো, বাবাকে প্রণাম করলো। বাপের ইচ্ছা দেখেন এদের ব্রহ্মজ্ঞান কিরূপ হয়েছে। Father had two sons. Both of them were sent to the Guru Griha to live in the intimate contact with the illumined Guru and learn about divine truths, scriptures, and so on. When they came back after completing their education, they bowed down to the father with reverence, and the father wanted to test them how much of knowledge they have acquired. He asked the first boy, বড় ছেলেকে জিজ্ঞাসা করে, বাপ তুমি তো সব পড়েছ, ব্রহ্ম কিরূপ বলো দেখি। বড় ছেলেটি বেদ থেকে নানা শ্লোক বলে বলে ব্রহ্মের স্বরূপ বোঝাতে লাগলো। বাপ চুপ করে রইলেন। Asked the elder son, you have studied so much with the Guru, with your teacher, can you describe to me what is the nature of Brahman? From the scriptures you have studied so much. Then the elder boy, quoting from the scriptures, describing the nature of the Brahman. Ashabdamasparshamaroopamavyayam tatharasam nityamagandhavachayat anadjanantam mahataparam dhruvam nachayatan mrityumukhat pramuchyate. Kathopanishad. It is beyond words, beyond taste, cannot be grasped by the senses, by the mind, and so on. Yato vacho nivartante aprapya manasasaha. The mind cannot reach there, the speech cannot reach there, the various senses cannot comprehend Brahman. Na antah pragyam na bahih pragyam no bhayata pragyam na pragyanaghanam na pragyam na pragyam adashtam avyavaharyam agrahyam alakshanam achandyam avypadesyam ekatmapratyaysaram prapanchopashamam shantam shivam advaitam chaturtham manyante sa atma savigneyaha. Mandukyopanishad. It is not in the waking state, it is outwardly focused consciousness. In the dream state, it is inwardly focused. In the deep sleep state, it is unfocused, it is like a lump of consciousness. And this Atman, which is neither outwardly focused consciousness nor inwardly focused consciousness, nor is a lump of consciousness. It is beyond speech, beyond mind, unthinkable, undescribable, and it is tranquil, supreme peace, and the essence of auspiciousness, and it is non-dual, and this is Atman, and that is the fourth state. These are all great descriptions. In manasana manute yenahura manomatam tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam mididam upasate. The mind cannot reach there, it cannot describe. Think about this. All these various scriptural descriptions describe Brahman. Satyam jnanam anantam brahma yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman. Taittiriya Upanishad. Satyam jnanam anantam. Brahman is Satya, truth, Jnanam, essence of consciousness, awareness, Anantam, infinite. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. And that which is realizable as your own Atman inside your consciousness. All these great descriptions, the elder boy, perhaps quoting all this, trying to describe Brahman from the scriptural point of view. And the father listened quietly, was very happy about the scholarship of this boy, and then came to the second boy. তখন ছোট ছেলেকে জিজ্ঞাসা করলেন, সে ঠেট মুখে চুপ করে রইল, মুখে কোনো কথা নাই। Then he asked the younger boy, can you describe Brahman? What have you learned about the nature of Brahman? Then the younger boy simply put his head down and did not speak a single word. বাপ তখন প্রসন্ন হয়ে ছোট ছেলেকে বললেন, বাপু তুমি একটু বুঝেছ, ব্রহ্ম যে কি মুখে বলা যায় না। What a powerful, simple parable through which he brings the highest truths of the Upanishads and the Gita in a homely fashion so that ordinary minds like us can grasp, understand. These are all great mantras to be meditated upon, contemplated every day. Then the father said, Bapu, my child, my dear, you alone have understood something of Brahman, a little of Brahman. What Brahman is cannot be spoken of by speech. So Brahma Uchishta Hoinai, that Brahman alone has not been defiled by the tongue because nobody has been able to speak about Brahman. মানুষ মনে করে আমরা তাকে জেনেছি, জেনে ফেলেছি. Look at the expression. The human mind thinks that we have understood Brahman. Jene phelechi is a very expressive statement in Bengali. Jenechi means I have known. Jene phelechi means, well, I have known it for sure. It's as if it's nothing. It's a very simple thing to know Brahman. Then he gives a beautiful example. Once again, these are all imageries, pen pictures that he draws, which can be imagined, meditated upon, and then we can derive great benefit from these teachings. একটা পিঁপড়ে চিনির পাহাড়ে গিয়েছিল. A small ant went to a sugar hill. এক দানা খেয়ে পেট ভরে গেল, আর এক দানা মুখে করে বাসায় যেতে লাগলো। যাওয়ার সময় ভাবছে এবার এসে সব পাহাড়টি লয়ে যাব। An ant went to a sugar hill and ate a small particle of sugar, and the little stomach of the ant was filled. He took another particle of sugar in his mouth and went back to its hole. While going back, he turned and saw the hill and said, next time on, I will take the entire sugar hill and put it in my little hole. Just imagine this. Draw a pen picture in your own mind. We are all those little stupid ants, imagining that we have known God, known Brahman, after having a very small realization, after having studied a little, memorized a little, even some kind of anubhuti, very preliminary kind of experience. These experiences are nothing in the vast spiritual journey. It may come most naturally, but if you are caught in those experiences and rejoice and said, I have achieved something, you are caught in it forever. You can't progress. The famous example which Ramakrishna gives in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the Kathamrita, the story, the parable of a woodcutter. A woodcutter went to the forest and started cutting wood and became slowly becoming richer. Then he met a brahmachari, a holy man, who said, Egiye podo, go forward, don't stop. Then after cutting some wood, he remembered the injunction and the advice, the instruction of the holy man. The holy man said, go forward, don't stop. He went forward farther into the wood and saw some sandalwood. Oh, he was so delighted. He brought some sandal home and sold them at a very high price and became very rich. And he was happy and he was resting. Suddenly the voice of the holy man was ringing in his inward mind, consciousness. Go forward, don't stop. Stop not till the goal is reached, as Swamiji said. These are all great mantras for us. Then next day he said, the holy man, the brahmachari, did not tell me to stop. Egiye pado, go forward. Then he went still forward and saw a great silver mine. And he was simply stunned. Oh, silver! Then he became still richer, came back and was satisfied. I said, I have had enough. Again, those words of this holy man constantly ringing in his unconscious mind. Go forward, don't stop. Go forward, don't stop. Egiye pado, theme theko na. Next day he went still forward and he saw some gold. Then he said, I should go still forward. Saw the rubies and diamonds. What is meant is in spiritual life, there is no stopping. You go and explore and go on exploring. You get newer and newer things. Ratana manikya kato pore ache shei jole. Tumi dam samarthe ek dube jao. Milibe ratan phale phale. Dub de re man kali bole. Hridi ratna kore. Agad jole. Ram Prasad. Oh, these songs are immortalized by Ramakrishna by his singing in his sweetest voice. How many times Ramakrishna has sung this? Oh, mind, dive deep in the ocean of consciousness. Taking the name of Mother, taking the name of God, taking the name of Kali, and how many rubies and diamonds are there lying on the bed of that ocean. But you have to dive deep. And without fear, taking the name of God, the Jai Kali, and then boldly you enter and dive deep. How much of diamond and how much of gold and how much of extraordinary jewels will be yours. And be careful. Kamadi choi kumbir ache, ahar lobhe shodai chole. তুমি বিবেক হলদি গায়ে মেখে যাও ছোবে না তার গন্ধ ফেলে. There are 6 alligators, terrible crocodiles. They're constantly moving about in this ocean. What are the 6? Shadrupu. 6 terrible enemies. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya. How our ancients have classified even the internal enemies into just 6. Think of their genius of classification. How many kinds of obstacles you may have? They said just 6. All the other obstacles can be subsumed, included in the 6. Kama, lust, baser passion, craving for sensual pleasure, Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, for sound by the ear, Sparsha, the touch by the skin, Rupa, the sight by the eyes, Rasa, the taste by the tongue, Gandha, the smell by the nose. These are the 5 senses. Kama, craving for sensual pleasure by the senses. The eye wants to see movies and televisions, internet. Smartphone is giving you everything just on the palm top. Shabda, you want constantly plug your ears with all kinds of gadgets and want to listen to music, listen to songs, listen to speeches and so many things. Tongue wants to taste all kinds of things. And that which nobody can eat, that human beings eat. There is no end to the greed of the tongue. Lobha. Lobha is the greed. I want more. Moha, delusion. What is moha? Aviveka. Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankara, Sridhara Swami, all of them interpret in the Gita. Aviveka is moha, delusion. What is delusion? What is aviveka? Lack of discernment and discrimination between karya, akarya. What is to be done, what should not be done. Nitya, anitya, what is eternal, what is non-eternal. Sat, asat, what is real and what is unreal. And you being an enlightened, educated human being, lower yourself to such an extent that you do things, talk about things which you are not supposed to do. You belong to a very high pedigree. You have a very, very high pedigree. You are the children of immortal bliss, Amritasya Putra. You can't be behaving like an animal. But we debase ourselves. Uddhared atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet. Instruction by the Bhagavan Sri Krishna in the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Raise yourself by yourself. Don't debase yourself. Don't demean yourselves. We demean ourselves. We debase ourselves. We become like animals and brutes. Moha, kama, krodha. When the kama is stopped, when we are not allowed to enjoy Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha, terrible anger comes to us. No, you are high diabetic, you should not eat these sweets. No, I shall eat. Don't stop me. Don't go and watch those ugly, dirty movies. It's not good for you. No, don't stop me. Now the children nowadays, smartphone is simply like a rakshasa, like a demon, like a devil is simply destroyed us totally. Kama, krodha, lobha, greed, moha, delusion, lack of discrimination, lack of discernment between what is to be done, what is not to be done, karya, akarya, viveka is lost. Aviveka. Mada matsarya, mada pride. You are so proud and you are so egoistic and you don't listen to elders, you don't listen to right instruction. You think I know. Matsarya, jealousy, envy. You can't bear somebody else coming up. Constantly cavilling, envying, being jealous of people. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. These are called 6 alligators which are moving about in the sea. Ahar, lobhe, shodai, ready to devour you at every moment. You, a sadhaka, a person who is diving deep in the God's glory, in the ocean of consciousness, be extremely careful. Dive deep, and you shall get all these precious jewels and gems. Again and again, Sri Ramakrishna used to insist on this. So he says, like the ant, এবার এসে আর পাহাড়টি লয়ে যাব। ক্ষুদ্র জীবেরা এইসব মনে করে জানে না ব্রহ্মবাক্যমনের অতীত. It is beyond speech and mind and the infinite. How much is the infinite dimension of Brahman? How much you have to dive deeper and deeper and deeper. Never stop, never stop. Don't be satisfied with the little experiences that we get. You may have some experiences. These are nothing. There is a wonderful statement made by Mahapurush Swami Shivanandaji. These are men of great realization, possessing so much of spiritual power imparted to them by the Yuga Avatara Sri Ramakrishna. He was the 2nd president of Ramakrishna order, Swami Shivanandaji. Somebody, one disciple, came and asked him, have you realized God? Some outsider, or some devotee, or some disciple. Shivan just smiled and said yes and no. How can there be yes and no? If yes is yes, no is no. Then he explained with a simile. Have you seen the Ganges, the Ganga flowing? Yes. Ganga is flowing towards what? Towards the ocean, the Ganga Sagar. It meets the ocean. Has the Ganges reached the ocean? Realized the ocean? Yes, of course. In the Ganga Sagar, it meets the ocean. But has it met? No, because continuing to flow towards the ocean. Just like the Ganges has reached the ocean but is continuing to flow towards the ocean, one can never say, nobody can say, I have reached God, I have realized God. You realize Him and continue to keep realizing Him, because if He is infinite, realization of God is also infinite. Tini ananto, patho ananto. Infinite is the supreme reality, and the ways by which you can reach the infinite are also infinite. There is no saying that I have realized God because He is infinite. You can become Him. In that case, the question of you realizing Him does not arise. I, as an individual, Jiva, realizing Brahman as the infinite, will mean that I am separate from Him. So Ramakrishna again gives the example in the Kathamrita. A salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean. Nuner putul samudram apte geche. Imagine this wonderful simile. Imagine a putul, a doll made of salt, and is taking a big stick. Now, let me go and measure the depth. The moment it entered the ocean to measure the depth, what happened? It melted away. Has the salt doll realized the ocean? Known the ocean? Yes and no. It has not realized the ocean as apart from itself, because it has become the ocean. It has realized the ocean as the ocean because it became the ocean. Which means there are two types of knowledge. One is knowledge as the other, knowledge, knowing as an object, and knowing by becoming. I know the ocean as an object. I am a jiva. I know God as other than me. But that is not the kind of God we are talking about. Tadeva brahmatvam vidhi nedam ididam upasate. The Upanishad says, the Kenopanishad, we are talking about that Brahman which is one with your own self, and not the Brahman which you worship as apart from yourself. Not the Upasya Brahman, but the Geya Brahman. Shankaracharya, the great commentator, distinguishes between these two Brahmans. The Geya Brahman is something which you realize as you identical with your own self, the Jiva Brahma Aikya. Upasya Brahman is something which you worship as apart from yourself. The Saguna Brahman, the Sakara, Saguna Brahman which you worship. The Upanishad says, I am not talking about that Upasya Brahman, but the Geya Brahman. This Brahman, the Upanishad says, and Shankaracharya also in the commentary it corroborates, is called Upanishadam Brahma, that Brahman which is spoken of in the Upanishads. That Brahman which is spoken of in the Upanishads is not the Geya Brahman, is not the Upasya Brahman, but it's the Geya Brahman which is your own very self. So, you can't say, I have realized God, unless you become God. You melt away into the infinite ocean of God consciousness, in which case you can never say, realize, know, speak that you have known Him. All speech is hushed. All thinking stops. And you become zero, your individuality completely melts away, you become completely reduced to zero, shunya. Because you become the infinite ocean which is Purna. What Buddha called Shunya, later on developed by Nagarjuna and others, the egolessness, anatta, your I, your atta, which is the ego, according to Buddha, is just not there. It is a zero. When you reduce yourself to zero, realize yourself to understanding that you are just nothing, then you realize you are everything. The zero, shunya, and the infinite, purna, are one and the same thing. Girish Chandra Ghosh, the great poet and the dramatist, in a dramatic fashion, drew two pictures. He said two great sadhakas, great men of God, were tempted by Mahamaya, the world bewitching Maya. She threw a big net to catch them. And one of them became so big, vaster and vaster and vaster, and he became infinite that the net could not hold him. The other became so small, smaller and tinier and tinier and smaller, till he escaped the net. Zero. The first person is Swami Vivekananda, who realized the whole thing as infinite and realized his own consciousness as subsuming, including everything in the universe, like Ashtavakra. And later on he proclaimed one world pulpit, bold words, which is quoted by Romerola in his biography. Never forget the glory of human nature. Buddhas and Christs are but waves on the infinite ocean of consciousness which I am. Mai ananta maham bodho ascharyam jiva vichaya udjanti khnanti khelanti pravishanti svabhavataha. Ashtavakra Samhita. On the infinite ocean of consciousness which I am, my real nature, is the Atman, which is identical with the Supreme Brahman, the infinite. Hundreds of thousands of waves arise. Various jivas, beings in the worlds arise and set. Again, merge into the ocean. So worlds after worlds, the jivas, beings arise from me, the Supreme Consciousness, and again they merge into me. I am that infinite ocean. That is the path of jnana, infinite. And the path of bhakti says, I am nothing. You reduce yourself to nothing and then escape the net. So the entire picture can be just 3 words you remember. Whole of Indian spirituality, the Bharatiya Darshana, Bharatiya Adhyatmika, can be just summarized in 3 words. The inquiry begins with Koham, who am I? Kaha aham. Aham I, kaha who. Who am I? In the path of bhakti, devotion, reduce yourself to non-entity. Naham, naham, not I, not I. The I is completely reduced to nothingness. In the path of jnana, soham, soham, I am that infinite self. Begin with koham. In the path of bhakti, go to naham. In the path of jnana, go to soham. And soham and naham are identical. Because it's the ego which vanishes. You realize yourself as the infinite. Aham vrikshasya reriva kirti prishtham gireriva. Taittiriya Upanishad. The Rishi says that. Iti Trishankur Vedanavasanam. Trishankur, the great Rishi, says, I am the source of this vriksha, samsara vriksha. I am that urdhva moolam, adhashakam, yeshoshvatha sanatana. Kathopanishad. Urdhva moolam adhashakam, nashvatham prahurabhyayam. Bhagavad Gita. That samsara vriksha, the tree of samsara, tree of the world, the tree of the transmigratory existence, is a peculiar kind of inverted tree. The moola, the root, is above, and all the branches are all below. What is the root? Root is Brahman. Tadeva Shukram Tad Brahma Tadeva Amritamuchyate. That is Shukra, the purest of the pure. That is Brahman. That is immortal. Kathopanishad. And the Rishi says, I am that Brahman. Vrikshasya Reriva. I am the root of this Brahman, root of the samsara. Am Vrikshasya Reriva. And another interpretation is, I cut this tree. Ashvathamenam suvirodhamulam asanga shastrena dridhena chitva. Cut this tree of samsara with the asanga shastra, with the weapon, with the sword, with the axe of non-attachment. Completely withdraw is vairagya, detachment. I don't want anything from this world. I am the purest of the pure. No attachment, no hankering, no craving for anything in this world. I am that. The boldly Trishanku declares, Aham Vrikshasya Reriva. You know my glory? You know my majesty? You know my infinite presence? I'll tell you. Kirti Prishtham Gireriva. Giri is a great mountain, like the Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world. My glory is that of a huge mountain. Indescribable, infinite, immeasurable is my glory. I am not a small, limited entity encased in this body and mind, crying, I am weak, I am depressed, I can't live in this world anymore. Come on, this Vedantic therapy will arouse you. You are not little entities crying miserably. You are that infinite self. Swami Vivekananda repeated this hundreds of thousands of times, particularly in the West, where they were obsessed with their being sinners. They have just one life to go. At the end of this life, at the day of judgment, you will be judged by God. Either He will send you to hell or heaven. They are all shivering all the time. What will happen to me? I have no other chance. In Vedanta, there are hundreds of millions of chances. Again and again you can come and improve yourself. And the highest Vedanta says you don't have to come again and again. In this very life you can realize your infinite potential. If you can realize yourself as the infinite self in this very life, great will be your gain. Else, terrible is your loss. Iha cheda vedit atha satyamasti nachediha vedin mahati vinashtihi. Kenopanishad. If you can realize atha satyamasti, it is truth that you realize. Nacha avedin, if you don't realize yourself in this very life, great is your, terrible is your loss. What is the loss? Again and again and again you'll come round and round in this cycle of transmigration. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare shayanam. Iha samsare khaludustare kripaya pare pahi murare. Bhaja govindam, bhaja govindam, govindam bhaja mudhamate, samprapte san nihite kale, nahi nahi rakshati dukrinkarane. The immortal simple verse of Bhagavan Shankara, for our sake it was written. He saw an old man memorizing the various grammar sutras, the Vyakarana sutras. Dhatu Patha, Dukrinkarane, Dukrinkarane. An old man just about to die. And Shankara, early morning, he got up and memorizing the sutras. And the great Bhashyakara, his heart was moved with compassion. Oh, old man, why are you wasting time acquiring all this knowledge? Come on. Bhaja Govindam, call on the Lord. Realize yourself as the infinite. Or else, the cycle of birth and death continuously moving round and round and round. Mahati vinashtihi. terrible will be your gain. And you can realize this Atman here in this very life because you are that self. Sri Ramakrishna also said, you can realize him in this very life, and unless you realize him in this very life, your life is in vain. Having attained this precious human birth, which is so difficult to attain, if you cannot realize God in this very life, your whole life is in vain. We have to remember this again and again. Ramakrishna insists. Eating and drinking and sense pleasures and society nonsense, Swami Vivekananda's words, is not worth wasting a life upon. Now the society nonsense has come in a very big way as a huge stumbling block in the form of social media. Continuously people are chatting and writing and blogging. You may be playing this game, but what for? Why? How long? Time is just going away. Ramakrishna told Niranjananandaji with great pathos and poignancy, Niranjan, din jaire, kokhon Ishwar labh korbi. It's all for us. My boy, days are passing away. Life is ebbing away. When will you realize God, my boy? That is your own self. It's just here. Great messages from the Upanishads and Gita and the Kathamrita. Some awakening is required. We have slept enough. We have played with these dolls of this world enough. With wives and children and money and position and credit cards and smartphones. We have played with all these ephemeral, evanescent, perishing dolls. Putule shunge kotar khelbi. How long will you play with these dolls, with these toys? Come on, wake up, wake up. Swami Vivekananda once said, I preach nothing else except awake, 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 awake. Uttishtata jagrata prapyavaran nibodhata. Kathopanishad. Arise, awake. And approaching great saints and sages and avatars who have themselves been awakened, the men of realization, and learn from them about the secret, the mystery of consciousness, and be free yourself. जाने ना ब्रह्म वाक्य मने रतीत जे जोतई बड़ो होक ना कहनो ताके की जानबे. Very important statement. You may be the greatest of saints. Even you can't really exhaust the infinite. Sri Ramakrishna says, how much can you know? You're just like an ant which has eaten a small particle of sugar and one more particle is carrying in the mouth and looking at the great sugar hill and imagining foolishly that it will drag the whole hill and put it in the little hole later on. Can your limited mind grasp it? Je joto bodo hok na kano. Taake ki janbe. However big, however great you may be, can you realize that infinite? Shukadevadi na hoy, dev pipade, chinir ardashta dana na hoy mukhe koruk. Such devastating statements. Only Ramakrishna had the daring to say this. Shukadeva is considered the greatest of saints. Shuka Brahmarshi was called. From childhood, he was so pure, so holy. He came with the realization. And Shukadeva, when he was born, the story in the Bhagavatam, he refused to be born into the world of Maya. But for the good of the world, it is necessary for him to be born. So the Devatas caught up a coup. They hatched a plan. Just for a second, they deluded him with the Mahamaya, and suddenly he was born. And from childhood, he had nothing to do with this world. Such unworldly, such extraordinarily God-soaked, and God really is a saint the world has not seen, as Ramakrishna says. Even Shukadeva is perhaps a big ant. Dev Pipade means sometimes you have seen that ants, which are small ants, and there are big black ants. If they sting, it hurts. big ant with a big head. They're called Devpipade in Bengali. These big ants, maybe Shukadeva is a Devpipade, a big ant. He perhaps can carry 8 or 10 grains of sugar. Ordinary saints can carry 1 or 2. He perhaps can carry 8 or 10. But how many millions of grains are there in this infinite sugar hill? Even Shukadeva. In another place in the Kathamrita, he says, these are all such extraordinary statements. If you meditate on them, you feel so humble, so small, and you pray for His grace. Oh God, you are so infinite. You are so great, but please bless me that I can realize even a particle of your mercy and grace. In another place, he says, Purane ekti ache, Satchidananda Sagare, দূর থেকেই দর্শন করেছে এরা, কেউ ডুব দেয়নি. Even Shuka heard the noise of the ocean only from a distance. Shuka was the greatest of saints. Satchidananda Sagar, the infinite ocean of Satchidananda, and Devadideva Mahadev, তিন গণ্ডুষ খেয়ে সব হয়ে পড়ে আছেন. The greatest of gods, the god of gods, Mahadeva, the great god Shiva, just sipped 3 morsels, 3 little doses from this great ocean of Chidananda, and he simply become unconscious and lying as a Shavarupa Shiva. If that is the case with Shiva and Shuka, where are we? That means never limit the infinite. The infinite is inexhaustible, vast. Nobody can actually limit the illimitable, describe the indescribable, measure the immeasurable. Having known this, having realized it, having understood even infinitesimally, our little ego gets crushed, simply pounded and burned to ashes and smashed to smithereens, and you cry with great earnestness of prayer. Asato ma sadgamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from darkness to light, and lead me from death to immortality. May the Supreme Being, whom we believe incarnated in this age of Sri Ramakrishna, along with the Shakti Sri Sharada Devi, Nararishi Narayana in the form of Swami Vivekananda, his dear Putra, Manasa Putra, men mind-born son Swami Brahmananda, and a host of others, may them give us the right vision, understanding, and fill us with the bhakti. Give us a particle of that infinite joy. Premaika bindum chiradagda chitte vishancha chittam kuruna sushantam. And the prayer goes, Swami Abhedanandaji's prayer to Mother, in this heart which is dry, which has no prema, which has no bhakti, which has no devotion, just give me a particle of that bliss and bless me forever and make me tranquil and calm. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampathruta Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namamaha. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.